Since 2010, with the publication of Ezra Levant's Ethical Oil and the establishment of an ethical oil website and social media presence in 2011, several dubiously grassroots organizations have begun to mobilize social media to position Canadian oil as a socioculturally, socioeconomically positive force. These efforts are a version of an earlier advertising strategy known as astroturfing that I've come to term petroturfing. My broad claim in my dissertation and in this presentation is that petroturf groups capitalize on the perceived democratic sensibilities and impulses of the internet, see Jody Dean's work on communicative capitalism, to reproduce petroculture, a term used by Stephanie Lemenager, Imre Zeman, Sheena Wilson, and others to name the ways in which oil as a dominant energy source shapes the material and cultural relations of the contemporary moment. Today I will look at how facts as an authoritative discourse are used to mobilize and further reproduce this reproduction in media produced by one of these groups. My method is more or less a cultural materialist one. In Capital and elsewhere, Marx asserts that the conditions and relations that make up the dominant mode of production, in this case capitalism, must continually be reproduced at both an economic and social level. Louis Althusser's careful reading of Marx in The Reproduction of Capitalism explores the reproduction of capitalism as a dominant mode of production, while developing the concepts of repressive and ideological state apparatuses to explain this process. According to Althusser, both apparatuses operate together to ensure the reproduction of dominant relations, in his and our case, capitalist ones. Althusser's nuanced understanding of this process of reproduction shows the ways in which the dominant mode of production, and to this I add dominant source of energy, gets reproduced beyond the level or plane of infrastructure. In this way, petroturfing is a conscious effort to reproduce petroculture at an ideological level, in tandem with its material reproduction. Virtually every YouTube video produced by British Columbians for Prosperity, BCP, conclude by urging their users to check the facts, sometimes even check our facts, with the links provided. Facts here are mobilized as claims to the realm of the real, broadly understood, for the sake of maintaining and reproducing petroculture, while enclosing the possibilities of imagining a future of a world beyond oil, let alone building it, and in making certain a petrol-based future, despite the fundamental uncertainty of the future. The appeals to facts at work here also either implicitly or explicitly construct dissenting voices as unreasonable, lacking in facts, while circulating mistruths, as if any serious criticism of Canadian oil and of pipeline development is already unfactual on the one hand and slanderous or unfair on the other. The motivations for BCP is to provide a counter discourse to the kinds of environmentalist campaigns that have rather successfully branded the oil sands industry as one that produces dirty oil. The kinds of gestures towards facts seen throughout petroturfing are impulses centered on a singular concept of balance. Due to the deep pockets of environmentalist groups like Greenpeace and the Sierra Club, petroturf groups must enter the picture to bring balance to one-sided debates about our energy future. In discussing its core beliefs, BCP states, "We believe that balancing responsible environmental stewardship with accountable, measured development means paying careful attention to the facts rather than the rhetoric, and taking account of technological improvements and regulatory changes that have altered how development impacts the environment." Petroturfing claims the oil industry and Canadian oil as victims of unfair, foreign-influenced, environmentalist ideological sabotage that has tipped the scales in public discourse. Fake news if I have ever seen it, considering the industry's enormous social and political influence. These notions of balance are tied to the kinds of liberal preoccupation with centers or middles that have become hegemonic, wherein alleged one-sidedness becomes the ultimate form of slander. In his dissertation, The Dialectic of Middleness, Andrew Pandakis provides an account of the ways in which centrism emerged as hegemonic in late capitalism. Centrism dismisses critique, and, Pandakis writes, becomes identifiable at the moment the gesture of critique is renounced as bias or mocked as the very picture of childishness. And such gestures of centrism mark every instance of petroturfing. Balance is a rhetorical device, and in the context of debates over the continued development of the oil sands, balance is achieved through the use of facts as an authoritative discourse. But facts are not a universal, objective, or apolitical language. Mary Puvy's work on the genealogy of what she identifies as the modern fact shows us the economically and politically charged history of the emergence of the contemporary understanding of facts and their a priori authority. Facts as we understand them today are bound to a particular late 19th century epistemological history that understood numbers as a wholly accurate mode of representation, a kind of hard realism. Numbers have come to epitomize the modern fact, Puvy writes in A History of the Modern Fact, because they have come to seem pre-interpretive or even somehow non-interpretive. At the same time, they have become the bedrock of systematic knowledge. In this way, facts qua numbers become a privileged, irrefutable discursive form. After all, the OED defines a fact as a thing that has really occurred or is actually the case, a thing known to be real occurrence, or to represent the truth. Hence, a particular truth known by actual observation or authentic testimony, as opposed to inference, conjecture, or a fiction. The numbers that permeate through BCP's media are not facts in any sense, but rather promises. Promises that attempt to claim prescience over an uncertain future, thereby enclosing possibility. As with Petroturfing's process of legitimation through circulation, the reality of these claims is not what produces the outcome of Petroturfing, but rather the initial claim to reality and balance by counterposing itself against oppositional irrationality and imbalance. In this way, Petroturfing offers itself as a case study in how social media in a post-truth era tends to function, to reproduce already dominant discourses in relation urged on by powerful voices, whether from the pipeline or the White House.